Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Brian Lusk. We are going to jump into some information about Vivek Ramaswamy, one of the presidential candidates here. You see, Iowa caucuses, I believe, are coming up this next week, and I needed to know who I'm going to support in the end for president, at least in the primary process. Now, in order to do that, I had to spend some time getting to know a little bit more about the candidates, doing a little bit of research, finding their positions, and getting basically a little bit of that research done. Now, I took a look at Vivek Ramaswamy. This is not an endorsement, but my initial take on him as a candidate. And here is what I found out. Vivek Ganapathy Ramaswamy was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, to Indian immigrant parents. He attended a private Catholic high school, graduating valedictorian, went to Harvard, and received a bachelor's in biology. He's a self-described contrarian, libertarian, and even rapped libertarian-themed music under the name Vivek. By the time he attended Yale Law School, he was already wealthy, with a net worth of around $15 million. Before he attended law school, he had co-founded Campus Venture Network, a social networking website for student entrepreneurs looking to launch a business, which was sold off 2 years later. He also worked at a hedge fund, becoming a partner and co-managing the firm's biotech portfolio. When a company he had investments in ramped up the cost of a life-saving drug and caught the attention of the U.S. Department of Justice, he called the fraud involved a victimless crime. He would later call the man responsible brilliant and a pathological liar. His next major venture was founding biotech investment firm Roivant Sciences, which would buy up drug patents that had not yet been successfully developed and bring those to market. Through this, he purchased the controversial drug intipridine, which had already failed 4 previous clinical trials, and began hyping the new company holding it, Axovant Sciences. The company was taken through an IPO, scoring a market value up to nearly $3 billion. Ramaswamy would then cash out, taking a payout and selling his shares. The drug, then at that point, failed its 5th clinical trial quite publicly, tanking the company's stock nearly overnight. Roivant itself continued, however, eventually partnering with Chinese state-owned CITIC Group. Ramaswamy continued serving as CEO until 2021, becoming executive chairman, then resigned outright in 2023 to focus on his presidential campaign. He remains a significant shareholder in Roivant, though the company has never managed to turn a profit. An interesting side note, Roivant established a nonprofit social activist arm named Roivant Social Ventures, which promotes diversity, equity, and inclusion, and environmental, social, and corporate governance initiatives. That would be DEI and ESG. Vivek himself, though, has campaigned against these types of initiatives and has been downplaying his role in creating and overseeing this division, despite being CEO when it was carried out. In the year before his presidential run began, he co-founded Strive Asset Management, which brands itself as an anti-woke and anti-ESG asset management company. At this time, he began a crusade against ESG in investment practices, decrying so-called socially conscious investing as basically bad money practice and a threat to American society. He resigned from this position as well when he began his presidential campaign. When it comes to his politics, he voted for the Libertarian presidential candidate in 2004, but did not participate in the elections in the years following until 2020, where he supported Donald Trump. His voter registration in 2021 was listed as unaffiliated, but he now describes himself as a Republican. He's donated to both sides of the aisle since 2016. As for his stated political positions, get ready, this is going to be a wild ride. He opposes affirmative action, calls capitalism the antidote to India's caste system, and has called critical race theory in schools indoctrination. He opposes abortion, supporting 6-week bans at the state level with the typical exceptions, but opposes a federal ban outright. He's called the LGBTQ movement a cult and generally seems to take a stand against transgenderism, calling it a mental health disorder. Ramaswamy has called for more executive power and using that power extensively, pledging to fire 75% of federal employees and make federal employment at will. He's called for abolishing the Department of Education, FBI, ATF, IRS, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service, calling the Food and Drug Administration corrupt. He claims the chief executive has the power to abolish executive agencies at will, despite them being established by statute. Vivek has also called for raising the standard voting age to 25, which would require repealing the 26th Amendment to the Constitution. The exceptions to this would be for first responders, military members, or those that pass the civics test for naturalization. When it comes to illegal immigration, Ramaswamy has called for ending birthright citizenship, which would end the practice of anchor babies. He also called for the use of the military to stop the flow of migrants over the southern and northern borders, plus military action against drug cartels in Mexico. Foreign policy is likewise an interesting mix. He has called for concessions to Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war and ending aid to Ukraine in exchange for Russia ending its alliance with China. Ramaswamy also refuses to use military force against Iran for any reason. He has advocated for putting a gun in every Taiwanese household, but flat out refuses to use the U.S. military to defend Taiwan, though this seems to have been moderated as pending the U.S. achieving full semiconductor independence from Taiwan. Basically, once we have what we want, cut Taiwan off. With regards to Israel, he has said that the U.S. should provide diplomatic cover for Israel, but make aid contingent on how they would deal with Hamas. Vivek has declared the climate change agenda a hoax and asserted that more people die from climate policy than climate change. He has also taken the position that yes, fossil fuels cause climate change, but that isn't entirely bad, calling for people to be proud to live a high-carbon lifestyle. Calls for increasing fossil fuel use and production have been a staple of his campaign speeches. So overall, my thoughts on Vivek Ramaswamy. His early history in the tech industry, the biotech industry, really is concerning. He feels like a used car salesman. And the fact that he pumped up this company and then divested himself of it right before the information on the bad trials came out feels kind of shady. He's loud. Some might even call him obnoxious, although others would probably call him passionate. So therefore, he definitely knows how to get his point out into the public sphere. Despite calling himself a scientist, Ramaswamy's role has always been that of a financier or an entrepreneur, not a scientist. His biology background certainly would help him try and pick some of the winners and losers, though clearly there were definitely some losers in there. It feels like he represents his life almost falsely. I'd call it misrepresents it entirely. He's pursued the evangelical Christian vote, taking some positions and declarations that are basically boilerplate right from their positions. However, he's currently a monotheistic Hindu to my latest knowledge. Now that's interesting, and it does not necessarily mean that Vivek is misleading in that regard. He may hold those positions quite genuinely, but I have no way of determining that. He does possibly have a current net worth of more than $1 billion, though the last estimate was more like $950 million. He does live in an old money part of Columbus, the Upper Arlington. At least it was when I was in the area before. So you're looking at somebody who's been from a family of wealth for many years and has himself really obtained a great deal of wealth. So from a certain perspective, I can absolutely respect his history for building up wealth. How he has done so, though, definitely has some shady aspects, which put me to pause. So that's my thoughts on Vivek Ramaswamy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if this information is helpful to you in making up your mind. If you think somebody else could use this information, absolutely share it with them, as well as the other videos on the other candidates. Although at this point, with Chris Christie having dropped out, you have Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley as opposed to Donald Trump. So that's the choices on the Republican side. The Democrat side currently still has Joe Biden. There is another person who's basically almost disappeared in the press, and as far as I know, is pulling in absolutely no numbers to speak of. Third party, we do have Robert Kennedy Jr., and I will be looking at him soon. But the real decision as far as this goes, at least at this point of the process, has been on the Republican side, and that's why I focused my information there. I won't be able to get a Donald Trump video out before the Iowa caucuses start up, or at least I don't think so. That said, there's a lot known about Donald Trump already. He's already served as president once, and many things were great about his term, and many things were troublesome. But overall, that's what you're looking at. I'll try and get some additional information on him soon. And that's everything for today. Thank you for joining me. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.